Hello lovely people, welcome to the book chat, the regular roundup of stuff I've read at some point in my past. I've got quite a few books to talk about, so I'm going to try and be really concise.
Sophie Vlogs.
I'm going to start off with my fiction, kicking it off with Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is the second Adiba Jaigirdar book that I have read, and I've loved both of them. Hani is very popular, but one day she comes out to her friends as bisexual, and they don't believe her because they know that she's never dated a girl, and so she lies, and she says that she's actually dating Ishu. Ishu is not that popular, but she wants to become head girl, and so Hani and Ishu start fake dating so that they can make their point in the way that they want to. I just thought that this was brilliant. I love everything that this author writes. I think she captures that sort of particular age group really well with some of the specifically with the girls in this who are Hani's friends, that element of people that you've been friends with forever and that feel like they should be your best friends because you've known each other for so long, but actually the way you grow, that you can grow apart, or that things especially relationships between girls can become really toxic in some ways that are hard to make a clean break from, because a lot of the ways that Hani's friends kind of punish her for things is very manipulative and it's hard to call out. And that's something that I definitely feel like I have experienced in my teenage years, and it's something that I feel like was captured really well. Also, the way that racism sort of rears its head in this kind of age group as well, because these are kids who have known each other for a long time, but the white kids who are Hani's friends express their racism in again ways that are sometimes slightly harder to directly call out. I don't know, I just also the actual fake dating plotline was extremely sweet. I think that fake dating can work really, really well if you plot it at the right pace, and this pace really worked for me. I think it's very cute because they both know their sexuality when they start fake dating. You go from people who don't really know each other, you become friends, could there be something more, but you don't want to ruin what you have, etc, etc, etc. Very adorable. So once again, this was another hit for me. I really enjoyed it. I'll read everything that this author writes. The next fiction book I want to talk about was on my Kindle. I don't know why I held it up that way. This was The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. This is the fourth book of the Truly Devious series, although this one stands on its own, whereas the other three were all exploring the same murder. In this one, Stevie has been invited to spend the summer at this summer camp where there was a murder in the 1970s, and the guy who runs the camp wants to make this podcast solving the murder, so he's called Stevie in, she's allowed to bring her friends, and then shenanigans ensue. One thing that I always really like about this series is I feel like Maureen Johnson is really good at capturing setting. With the original trilogy, the setting of Ellingham Academy was so fabulous. It was one of the real strong parts of the narrative. And this one kind of is the same for me. It's set in this summer camp. It's really evocative of a lot of American TV shows and films that I have seen. I've never been to an American summer camp, but the way she describes it, I felt very rooted in what it was like. There are elements of this that felt a bit like slasher film, that's deliberately done, I think. This setup feels like that because that's what the town has always assumed it was. Whereas Stevie is really investigating, trying to dispel that idea that it's just some crazed serial killer, and being no, who in this town had motive, who in this town had purpose and opportunity and that kind of thing. One of my complaints about the Truly Devious series is I found it really annoying because some of the flashbacks gave you information that was key to solving the mysteries, but then you had to wait ages for Stevie to catch up, and that was frustrating as a reader because it really dulled some of those reveals, because by the time she discovers it, you're I know, I've known for a while. This one didn't do that, so I did appreciate that. A lot of the flashbacks were giving you character information or personality information, but they weren't revealing things to you before Stevie got to them. At the same time, the reveal of this I have some mixed feelings of. I felt I really enjoyed the process as this was being plotted out, and I was so intrigued. The person who I thought did it, but not for the reasons that I thought that they were gonna do it. I think the reveal has an element of it's really hard to discuss without spoilers. There are some elements about it that I find unsatisfactory, in sort of just a ta-da kind of way. But on the whole, like, I did really enjoy this. I find Maureen Johnson's writing really easy to read. I will say that David was infinitely less annoying this time around, probably helped by the fact that he just wasn't in it as much, so I appreciated that. And also the, like, characterization of the guy who owns the camp felt very funny. Like, this, like, that type of tech guy really does exist, and they do have no self-awareness, and I felt like that was done in a very good way. So yeah, I will be interested to see if she continues this series with more like one-shot standalones, because it kind of seems like that might be where she's going. But I would be really interested to hear your thoughts if you have read this as well as Truly Devious. Like, how did it work for you compared to the series? Like, would love to hear any thoughts on that. The rest of this book chat is going to be non-fiction books, so I'm going to kick it off with All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which is a memoir manifesto about growing up black and queer. This has been all over BookTube. I finally got around to it. It took me long enough, didn't it? I really, really enjoyed this. This is definitely aimed at a YA readership, and I think like the language and the tone works really well for the readership that it's intended to have. Occasionally, as a result of that, sometimes I felt like it was a little bit like showing, like telling you rather than showing you. Like, morals and messages are very explicitly spelled out in this, which again probably works really well for the age group that it is targeted at. As a more mature reader, obviously sometimes I was like, I understand your point, you don't need to like explicitly tell me, but also like sometimes things aren't meant for you. I think that this is really powerful. I think a lot of the stuff in this like really needed to be said, and I appreciated the depth to which George M. Johnson like shared their life with us. I definitely think this is a book that a lot of like teens will find really great to read, so I think that's wonderful. Another sort of like queer non-fiction book is Go the Way Your Blood Beats on Truth, Bisexuality and Desire by Michael Amherst. I had a slightly more complicated reading experience with this one. This one I was just like, thought it was great, had a good time reading it. This one, like, this is an interesting form. Let's start there. So this is like part essay on bisexuality and queerness, part like memoir, but also interspersed with like letters to people that he has had relationships with in the past. But the form is such that like those things aren't distinctly separated out. It just is like one long narrative. There's no chapter breaks. Things are split into like paragraphs, and sometimes these like reflections on past experiences are in like italics, but other than that it's very much like one long narrative, which was really interesting to like immerse oneself in. Some of the parts of it worked a lot better for me than others. One like big bone of contention that I have with this is I think it is it bothers me that the subtitle says On Truth, Bisexuality and Desire, because as a bisexual, that's why I picked up this book, when actually, for quite a bit of the start point of this, it kind of feels like he's talking about how, like, bisexuality as a label is too restrictive and he doesn't use it. So I found it weird to like, subtitle it using bisexual as an identity label, when actually I feel like a lot of what Michael Amherst is saying is that, like, that as an identity label doesn't really, like, work for him. He finds it too constrictive, and, like, it seems like he prefers things like queer and, like, that kind of thing. So just, like, a note. This is also kind of weird in that sometimes the point he was making, as someone who has existed for a while, and I've spent a lot of time in like queer circles online and like reading a lot of non-fiction books and that kind of thing, sometimes the points he was making felt quite simplistic, and I was like, yeah, okay, anything else? And then other times, some of the points, like, he took them quite far, and that was really interesting to read, to like challenge my perspective and my understanding, even if I don't always agree with some of where he goes. It was interesting to see the process and his perspective. I think that he is more leaning on the side of like not needing labels and like getting rid of some of these things as like a liberation moment, more so than necessarily I am, because personally my experience involved finding labels really useful because I found a sense of self in that, and I found it very comforting to be able to put words to experience. So I respect the fact that that is not everyone's experience. It's just, you know, we differ in these ways. This is one that I think will probably stay with me, and I'll probably be like muddling things out for a while. I think it's one that is going to be challenging to a bunch of people, not just by what it is saying, but also by the form in which it is saying it. So it has certainly been, I keep using the word interesting, I can't think of a better word. It has certainly been illuminating as an experience to read. Penultimate book is The Brief Life of Flowers by Fiona Stafford. This is nature writing. Essentially, each chapter focuses on a different flower, and then she just kind of tells you about them. I like nature writing of this style, where we're just like exploring topics. This covers quite a broad range of things, depending on the flower. So, like, it covers things like medicinal use, folktale beliefs, like how certain flowers came to be emblems of things or like associated with things, like the meanings of flowers and where they have developed, like flowers in literature, like all of these many things. Kind of also an aspect of the nature of this style of book is that some chapters are a lot stronger than others. I really liked the chapter on roses because roses have so many things associated with them, and sometimes they are contradictory. So the form that she took with that one is she kind of went through like alphabetically, but not like, it wasn't just like a list like of the alphabet. It was like as she went through each like paragraph that had like a word in italics that was the next letter in the alphabet, and she just explored all of these different associations, and I felt like that chapter was really strong. Some of these chapters, like, definitely there was less to say because there's less associated with those flowers. Like, I think that's expected based on what she's dealing with. It just meant that occasionally the quality of this was maybe slightly patchy. This is definitely one to sort of like settle into and noodle around. Finally, I just wanted to briefly mention this book. This is Cook As You Are, Recipes for Real Life Hungry Cooks and Messy Kitchens by Ruby Tandoh. I've mentioned before that I love Ruby Tandoh with my whole heart. She's one of my favourite food writers. This is mainly a cookbook, which is why I won't talk about it for too long, but as with Eat Up, her other book, well, Eat Up was more essays with some recipes. This is recipes with some essays, but I love her essays. I find it so interesting. I think she does a really great job with this one. With every book has like introductions to like each of the recipes, and then also she has a lot of stuff in this to do with making everything as accessible as possible, whether that is easy substitutions depending on dietary requirements, or ways to make these accessible if you have mobility issues or like chronic tiredness, like stuff like this. Just like any way that she could make this more accessible, she has done so, which I super duper appreciate. And then the actual essays that are interspersed with this, I love the way she writes about food. I love that every section starts with like a list of suggestions of other cookbooks. If you particularly liked these flavours, go forward and explore these, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to mention it because I am Ruby Tandoh trash, and I think that this is a brilliantly accessible cookbook for whatever your cooking level is, whether you want to do some more challenging things like make your own cheese, or like super duper simple things that are really easy to achieve if you don't have a lot of spoons. Like, super great. That's everything I wanted to talk about this week. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to leave a comment down below, please do. Otherwise, I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you next time for something different.